Hello, everyone, and welcome to your horoscope for the week of May the 27th till June the 2nd, 2024. We are ahead of quite of an intense week, and this is where it's going to feel rather dual. There is going to be a certain aura of perhaps playfulness, lightheartedness, a lot of information communication, even learning, even one's own epiphanies and one's most elevated thoughts, basically shooting to the service of our consciousness. That is the more positive, surprising, and also a progress oriented part of the week. But on the other side, there is strong, let's say, seriousness, because very serious, important uh, life and perhaps even history changing events are unfolding as we speak. So those can simply not be ignored. But at the same time, neither can the other side of the spectrum, that which is much more hope, optimism, and light-hearted, even a very strong energy of child, even adolescent. That, of course, is because the Gemini party is starting to, form, where Jupiter, Venus, and the Sun already at the beginning of the week are still in this part of the sky. So this is a very, very strong activation of Gemini energy. And on the other hand, a lot of emphasis at this moment falls on Mercury, and Mercury uh, gains a lot suddenly, because this is quite a quick shift into Gemini over a few days. Jupiter very, very recently entered there, 25th, 26th. Uh, Venus and the Sun haven't entered into Gemini all that long ago. So this is where it's like a quantum leap into the frequency of Gemini, and this energy gets stronger and stronger. And there is another element here which strongly adds this Gemini specific ink tint coloring to the picture, that each of these planets, as they enter the sign of Gemini, they quickly start holding and then perfecting a trine with Pluto in fellow air sign Aquarius, retrograde. Pluto is retrograde. So, exactly because it's retrograde, it puts the emphasis of power or whatever Pluto may symbolize, individually in our own unique cases, that is more internal. So the power, the choice, the decision, the option, and the impact that it has lies on us. Power, symbolically, metaphorically, but in some cases, even very in a real sense, is in our hands, collectively speaking, but the power of the people. And one of the tools of the power of the people is without a doubt the Gemini manifestations, social media, media, words, communication, information, data, sharing data, even in an artistic way, technology, Instagram, TikTok, all the social media, mainstream media, everything is included here. Even the very rudimentary, the most rudimentary form of this is word to word, mouth to mouth, how information's always used to spread. And especially when big things are happening in the world, the spreading of the information, well, it's quick and tumultuous. Jupiter, as it touches Gemini, the expansive qualities are going to be felt. And this is where Gemini is going to be strongly activated, not just in our, generally speaking, in our realities, but also within us, because everyone has a part of Gemini within their chart, within their being, and that part, that area of life, that function of yours is gonna be all that much more active from now on until around May next year. So really important that all of us are gonna feel the need to communicate. What does Gemini rule first of all? Um, as the name even says, siblings, brother, sister, not just flesh and blood, anyone who we consider like, and this is where not just saying so, truly feeling it deeply, considering someone as a sibling, officially or unofficially, that is also included. So our closest souls can also be included. Um, neighbors, cousins, um, and basically anyone who we get into one-on-one, not necessarily relationship yet, but connection. There is the other. Of course, that is typically Libra, but when it's in Mercury's hands, it's Gemini, if you know what I mean. The processing of information. It is true that Libra and Venus with, in itself will determine the value and what we feel and think in a principalistic way, but the actual facts, the down to earth details, the data is going to be perceived and processed by Mercury. So Gemini, and especially the ruler Mercury, is always our data processing mechanism. Or let us look at Gemini from a more, let's say, symbolistic way. Gemini is usually associated with bees or other type of similar insects cross-pollinating. Cross-pollination is very, very suggestive because the pollen is the information going from one plant to the other, assuring the continuity of the system, the continuity of life, but basically life in the sense genetically, the information and how it will be coherent. And this is very much needed. And this is also where we see Mercury at work. There is method in the madness because the process itself is chaotic, but yet there is a method in it. Mother Nature developed that, if you know what I mean. That's so very much Mercurial and Gemini like. So we will see this play out in our lives and also in our realities and also on the world stage, especially already beginning with this week. But the more serious type of energy will start to get stronger, highlighted towards the end of the week. So at the beginning of the week, we still have quite a light-hearted, optimistic, curious, and the need to communicate Gemini type of attitude, and the inner child, inner adolescent is very much awakening. And Mercury being in the sign of Taurus, well, Taurus is also our five senses, ruled by Venus pleasure. That goes very well with the adolescent agenda, if you know what I mean. But there's also a serious side to it. Taurus with Gemini is a really good evaluation process. Taurus, what we feel about it, can we embody? Does it embody our principles, what we love, our value system? If it ticks yes, then Gemini, let's do something with it. Let's process it. Let's think. Let's the lower mind's functions to perceive reality and to translate it onto something mercurial, and only after will it be translated to something Jupiterian. So very important because Jupiter is also there. And Jupiter is not comfortable in Gemini. Why? Because Jupiter likes things to be organized. The cross-pollination example. The cross-pollination in Jupiter's image is basically the science behind it. It is the biology which admires it, which gives it a high purpose, which identifies Mother Nature's ingenuity and method within the madness. So Jupiter is the elevated expression of it. So you can imagine that, like with Jupiter and Mercury, I have to give a really concrete example. Let's say that Jupiter is the manager, and this is actually from my own life, and Mercury is the customer service person. I I'm Gemini, so that would be me. So let's say that there is a need to swap roles, where for an hour the manager has to take the customer service role and the customer service person to be a manager. Now, Mercury will be able to quite comfortably play the manager's role. Why? Because all it needs to do is gather information, all of the higher functions of the manager, what it's really about. Well, chances are it doesn't have to really deal with that at all. It will just gather the information and then after the hour pass it on to the manager. This and this and this happened. What Mercury knows can very quickly solve. What it doesn't know, no problem. Just gather the information and pass it down. Now, the manager, however, will actually know absolutely everything that Mercury knows, the methodology, what they need to do at customer service, but the manager will find it extraordinarily uncomfortable because that is not his role, his Jupiter. He needs to oversee the big picture, the big functioning of the things. Even though he can do what Mercury does, he's not good at it and he doesn't like it. That's not. So you see what I mean? But Mercury itself cannot do what the manager has to do in the big run, the decisions, the knowledge, the practicality, the high level, basically, information being implemented. That's not Mercury's domain. Mercury just works with that when it's passed down to it. So this is the two planets, and this is why Jupiter has a strong uncomfortable side in Gemini. And the way we see that is greater difficulty to, for example, make choices, decisions, because the details, especially the two sides of the spectrum, are that much more obvious and we don't know how to weigh it, you know? Or Jupiter expands the information analyzing process. We fry our neurons out. So everything expanded sometimes is not so good. And Gemini also has a certain non-seriousness. Well, why? Mercury. Mercury was a god or a deity or which had access to everything, the underworld, the realms of hell, so to speak, heavens, the dome of the gods. Basically, Mercury was at home against the postman, of course, the information carrier in every dimension. So Mercury doesn't need to take it seriously. Why should he? He just passes down an information and that's it. He doesn't need to necessarily judge the information. Just here you go. So there is a certain kind of easiness to it and not taking things all that seriously. And this gives a lot of how should I say? It opens the door to optimism and the lightheartedness. So this is how alchemically this energy up. So we are gonna have a lot of this week. So I'm so sorry for this long introduction. Let us begin the horoscope. So we can see already at the beginning of the week, we have this triple conjunction between Jupiter just freshly entered Gemini, Venus at 4 degrees, and the Sun at 6 degrees. the sun at the very beginning of the week holds a semi-square with Chiron. So, our wounds are in our thoughts, so to speak. We try to make sense of them. We try, something reminds us of them. There is an uncomfortable energy based on wounding, maybe a moment of courage, where the courage, Sun in Gemini, doesn't really come from the mind. When you force it upon yourself, that's not real courage. Courage has to come from the heart. So maybe there is a moment like this. Am I sure I want to do this, or say this, speak this, write this, or not yet? Am I ready or not? There's that type of energy, but also Venus is the esoteric ruler of Gemini. So, for example, in tarot, Gemini is the lovers. So Gemini has cross pollination, a very Venusian vibe, a very slight, not, you cannot really put your finger on it, because Gemini also has very non-Venusian, anti-Venusian vibe, but it's dual, it can pull it off, but it also has Venusian vibes as well. So for example, when it comes to flirt, when it comes to moving your heart, values, Venus with the power of words, or rhetorics, that is very much Gemini. Especially if not just Venus in Gemini, but Mercury, the ruler of Gemini, both of them are in a very comfortable aspect with something. For example, like Jupiter, or even Saturn, the methodology, the experience, the I'm bringing it to the table, the determination type of energy. So that can give birth to a wonderful, super charismatic public speaker, for example. But, or for, if this um, trines or does something really good with Neptune, maybe singing, lyrics, poetry. But anyway, Gemini does have a Venus, so this week might be a very adolescent type of week, even romantically, sensually speaking, because that is also kind of typical to adolescence, if you know what I mean. And also the sun illuminating this part of the sky. And all through the week, the sun will dance with Venus in a conjunction. The conjunction is only going to be perfected next week around the 4th of June. But all through the week, on and off, this Venus and Sun are together in the sky. That means Venus is slightly combust, air fuels fire. So there is going to be passions. There is going to be, even, materially speaking, financial plans, tactics, speculations, business plans, negotiations, talks, anything that has to do with law and legislation, governing all of the financial sector in any shape, form, banking, or anything, basically. That also, Jupiter rules the law, and Gemini, the communication. The law is published, but Gemini is rebellious as well. Gemini has an Aquarian deacon in it. Okay, nothing's in it yet. Okay, no problem, but Gemini's energy is, from all the air signs, Gemini is the most volatile. But it's, anything that is in Gemini will sextile something in Aries. So you see the volatility of Gemini. And also the volatility of Aries. Aries, the head, and Gemini is the thoughts that light it on fire, or the words. It's because Aries is very sensitive to insults, words, quickly on fire. So you see the synergy here. Um, so at the beginning of the week, it's still a triple conjunction. So there is love in the air, Venus in air sign Gemini, love, value with words, communication, light of the sun. So we also see it, feel it, are it. We may be the speakers of the most beautiful words of truth, our truth, justice, uh, anything principalistic, Jupiter in Gemini, or anything spiritual, but with Gemini, either it's spiritual in a religious way or it's spiritual in a rather mercurial way, freely spiritual. So that's quite an intense beginning to the week. And also at the beginning of the week, Venus is still barely holding a trine with Pluto. So again, beauty inverts communication, uh, anything that has to do with negotiation, receiving something from the collective, from other people, from friends, Pluto in Aquarius, or your words, your deeds, your actions having an impact on the collective. Social, something you share on social media, for example, that is in flow, that is encouraged, so to speak. And look at it, the moon will conjunct Pluto also, which means the moon will trine Jupiter as well. Actually, the moon will trine Jupiter, Venus, and the sun one after the other. So something that has to do with intelligence, because we cannot ignore the airy quality of the trine. Regardless of what these two signs represent one another, intelligence, intellect, information is definitely part of it. That's what they very much have in common. So the information does something, maybe something powerful, Pluto, even collectively. However, the very same energy will very much favor rebellion, protests, etc., etc., etc. But you get somewhere with it, you know? And this energy is what will evolve like a slingshot all throughout the week. So let us move now to the 28th. 28th. So on the 28th, we can see that Mercury, and we must remember that Mercury is much more important, relevant, energetically, and in any way, shape, and form, since the Gemini planets moved into the respective sign, because it puts much more emphasis on Mercury. It gives much more power to Mercury. So Mercury holds a sextile with Saturn. I find this really so good. So good, because this is down to earth energy. Saturn, very earthly. Okay, it is in the watery, mystical, ethereal, dreamy, deeply susceptible to faith and philosophy sign of Pisces, but it's still Saturn, so it does give form, shape to even that which is unsusceptible to it. And then there is Mercury in the concrete earthly sign of Taurus and sextile. And remember that Mercury is empowered by the Gemini planets. So thoughts, the right evaluation of a situation, of something concrete like money wise or value wise, or of a relationship, of a connection, of anything really, a correct or a truthful, honest, but honest also means down to earth. It has to have a down to earth side as well. A good judgment, evaluation of values and anything that has to do with it, love as well, relationship, uh, really does a lot of good in our lives. It symbolically manifests, it turns into something. And let us not forget that the Gemini planet, and then including Mercury, after it will enter its home sign of Gemini, following the Jupiter, Venus, and the Sun quite quickly, not this week, but the week after. all of these planets will square Saturn. So this is why it's so important to get the and I don't know what other word to use, evaluation right. Whatever, however it comes up in our lives, may it be, again, I have to repeat, sorry, a relationship or a job or money, or do I invest, or anything of this nature, Taurian nature. Does it please me enough? Does it not? So we need to get things, or maybe one needs to make a compromise. How much of my highest principles do I put on the table, and how much of the compromise do I allow to coexist with, to get things right, but in an earthly way? So this is where we need to take the earthly and take it into consideration, because we are helping the alchemical process by doing that. And also Saturn in Pisces, morality, the principles of compassion, because Saturn is the father archetype, the principle of responsibility, the leader, so to speak, the patriarch. So if Saturn's action sextile are aligned with morality, etc., all of that, in a Piscean way, which means not necessarily rigorously religious, but rather common morality, you know, it's gonna do something really, really good and wise materially, practically. And when the planets get to square this same Saturn, including Jupiter, which will have two moments of square in its larger stay in Gemini with Saturn, those squares will be productive. Those squares will be us burning energy, but the results will come, Gemini, very quickly or instantly. So let us hope that if we judge things, and when I say judge, not in the bad sense, in the sense that if we have to make decisions in our lives and we have to come up with a certain balance or schedule, or to put something on the table decision wise from us, Sun in Gemini, from who it is that we are, well, then we have to act like a judge and take things into consideration and then give a solution, a verdict, a rule. This is how we lead our beings, our lives, basically. So in that sense, judge things correctly based on our own honesty, authenticity, wisdom. Also, that of the other, Gemini, knowing us is knowing the other and vice versa, and taking that into consideration. Pisces, the empathy. The empathy, and we are really just one. That's why Gemini, everyone's like a twin. If the energies are harmonious. So if we get things right now, then the square is gonna be super productive. It's gonna be the only hard square tension part is maybe the energy input. But if something is working like a charm, we want to input the energy as much as we possibly can. So whatever happens now will lead to further opportunities later. And even if we don't necessarily judge the situation correctly at the moment of the squares, the perfect opportunity to align quickly and make it productive. So no problem at all. Moving on the 30th, we have quite an important day, quite an energetic day. On one hand, Mercury, let's not, a bit of a reminder, uh, energized by the Gemini planet. And this is, you cannot see it on my screen because I need to put it a few hours back. This will do roughly. So Mercury uh activates that 22 degrees of Taurus where the Uranus and Jupiter conjunction took place. Now, this is very important. That conjunction is still in the air, not as powerfully as it was uh, around the 20th, 21st of May. And of course, a few days, even week before and after, but it's very much still there and fresh. And Mercury, the mind, we understand it differently, more fully, more completely. There is a filter, a mental, exactly, Mercury, the processor, the process, it's processed. Not fully, of course, because you can imagine that Jupiter and Uranus conjunction will echo for many years. But this is the first layer of our understanding. This is when we can already make something out of it, however it came up in our lives. Or if it hasn't yet in a significant way, Mercury may bring the news, communication, information, or your own thoughts and epiphanies that will lead you there. So, an important moment. And besides this, as you can very well see, Mercury is already conjunct Uranus, and this is also important because whenever these two planets are, they're each other's octaves. Uranus the higher, Mercury the lower. Both planets have a lot to do with mind. Mercury the lower mind, Uranus the higher mind, the highest mind, the quantum mind. So, and also like Uranus can represent the highest degrees of knowledge possible in a certain era, let's say. Mercury, the all of that stripped in a practical way. So let me just give you an example. Uh, there is biology. Now, there can be a doctor, professor, 10 PhD, Nobel Peace Prize laureate, all of a person who you can imagine how much information they and how much they research. And there can be the vet, the just a simple vet, the same type of thing, you know what I mean? But totally different understandings. Maybe the doctor professor, with all his superior knowledge, could not operate the doggy or whatever because he doesn't have the practice to it. But neither could the vet determine what type of exotic parasite is plaguing I don't know which companion animal. He would need the doctor professor for that to come up with answers, especially if that parasite is this case is unique. You know what I mean? So you see the synergy here. The same thing but different. Anyway, so one is Uranus, one is Mercury, and when the two come together, they solve a big case. Exactly my example with the exotic parasite. The two join forces and they come up with answers, and that changes the scientific world because another specimen or something that was unknown until then is added. So exactly what one would expect from a Uranus and Mercury conjunction, especially where Mercury is charged by this 22 degrees of Taurus and the fact that the Gemini planets energize it. And this takes place in Taurus, remember, which means that the ruler of Taurus is a bit combust. Venus. We are going to feel this in a very intense way. Let's hope that Uranus, it can be, surprise, surprise, something positive or a big epiphany, ingenuity, idea, communication, news, which really makes us think. It can even be official Jupiter. So, but collectively speaking, anything that has to do with economics, banking, finances, big news, big revelation, big game changer, which is an information, um, technology, artificial intelligence, anything that has to do with technology and agriculture together, genetic research. So all of the Taurian elements are going to be strongly emphasized. So news about big upgrades, Uranus. And again, also a bit of a calamity. And the very recent landslides in, oh, I forgot the place. I'm so sorry, but there was a catastrophic landslide in a more exotic country just now. You know, that's Mercury, the flowiness of it, and Uranus, the calamity, and Taurus, the earth. So we can also expect stuff like that. And there also is another energy at play where, if you can see, Mars and Chiron are conjunct. They perfect their conjunction in Mars's home sign of Aries. Now, this is very important because Mars will energize Chiron, the wound. Now, individually speaking, personally, we may have already a very uh, good clue about how we may feel this through, because this Chiron was activated by Venus, by Mercury. This Chiron had a lot of activations. It was a part of the eclipse as well. The eclipse in April, the 8th of April, total solar eclipse in the sign of Aries. So Chiron was very much the guest star of this whole astrological show since the North Node is in Aries. And just go back, go back to, I don't know, February, March, April, the wounding, what kind of triggered you? This is a self wound. I am wound. What did you feel like you're not good at? Or how were your Aries expressions challenged? Where was the wound? So Mars energizing it will do something with this wound. It can very well lead to an important moment of healing, an important decision that we may take based on the knowledge and understanding of the wound, understanding of the self. And this can really lead to good places, especially if Chiron's activation by Mars evokes our wisdom, evokes our self knowledge, the understanding that we very, very freshly harvested from all the other planets conjuncting Chiron and the eclipse and all of that. But I must say, there can be other expressions as well, because this can make the wound, like opening the wound, Mars, or, cauterizing the wound with fire, burning the wound to stop the bleeding. This can be a moment of great pain. Like, when you're at the dentist and they touch the nerve you're absolutely okay before, but they accidentally touch the nerve. In that millisecond, it's like lightning bolt goes through your whole of your body. You faint, basically. It's such an intense, short, but it can be like that. Emotional, wherever this 22 degrees of Chiron, actually 19 degree of Chiron to 22 degree falls into your chart. Collectively speaking, again, this can be a massive mobilization for healing purposes, collectively, whatever that means. And the thing is, it can mean so very many different things. exactly, calamities, mobilization to help victims, the political stuff, the wars, the humanitarian crisis. It can mean a lot of things, you know. So Mars energizes. We see all we see it play out in a very tumultuous way, let's say. But this can also represent wounding, a moment when the wound is so severe that something happens, enough is enough. We cannot take any more of this. A wounding, an aggression. But let us hope that Saturn in Pisces, Neptune in Pisces, compassion energy is strong enough for this to actually play out as a big mobilization of to heal or to help the wounded or etc etc. Let's hope that this is in a humanitarian and compassionate sense and not the opposite. um then let us move on. You know, this Mars conjunct Chiron is much more important than what how I worded it or the emphasis I put on it. But I do believe that if we treat this energy as best as we can individually, that automatically means its collective expression will mimic that. So if we do something with the wound constructive, for example, to emphasize our own healing and healing journeys, to be brave and dare to heal, to be brave and truly make first steps to solve a problem, or the knowledge of our own wounds gives us chance, power, opportunity to help another with the same wound. We can do so much with the wounding. You know, Mars gives us this power. So if we use it in a good way, the collective expression, as I said, has to mirror this, mimic this. Because it can be used in such a bad way. The wound, what does a wounded wild animal do? It's aggressive to everyone, lashes out, frenzy, berserk, etc., etc. So there are gonna be berserk news that someone with a long-term instability went berserk and did this and that. I'm so sorry, but this is also gonna be part. But we, of course, we are not focusing on all of this. We are actually making sure that that doesn't play out as violently as it can. Now, moving on to the 31st, we have Moon conjunct Saturn. So it this is where it's starting to get intense. Saturn in Pisces, serious emotion. We are considering something, the morality of something, the integrity of something. Saturn, or the malefic side of it. What is right, what is wrong, what is good, what is evil. And the moon, we're trying to process this emotionally, but the moon will move up to Neptune afterwards. So Neptune, the connection with spirit, dream, a strong feeling that takes over us. um you know, this Gemini energy with the spread of information, and it's going to be extremely tumultuous, and social media and everything like that is going to be on fire. New technology, new platform. Okay, we get it, the Jupiter and Gemini, but let's be aware that energetic Neptune is the illusion. So let's not give our belief to everything that we hear. To just look at it, acknowledge it as one thing, but let's take everything with a pinch of salt, because Neptune in 29 at 29 degrees of Pisces is also smoke and mirrors. Everything is a lie. Everything is altered. Everything is illusion. So yes, I have to mention that. So then we have the Mercury and Uranus conjunction. Big news, big. This energy can also give anxiety, insomnia, restlessness. It can really work our nervous system even physically strongly. So if we have strange symptoms, or if we are nervous for no reason at all, this will spike the Schumann resonance and all of that. So yeah, but in a practical way, this can be big news, big communication, big plan, big epiphany, important information reaching us, surprising communication, surprising words. It can be an important and intense way, both individually and collectively. And also, on this day, Pallas Athena, asteroid of tactics, of wisdom, of basically how to achieve something, the process, the methodology, putting it into perspective, opposes this Uranus and Mercury conjunction. So something blows our mind because Pallas Athena is going to be in Scorpio. So something simplified, something that used to be infinitely complex, unreachable almost in the realms of Scorpio, surprise, surprise, becomes simple even. Now, let me give you an example. Um, a certain kind of process that 20 years ago needed, I don't know, 20 computers or the maximum force of technology. Today, a, a really low quality smartphone can do with great ease. You know what I mean? So, this is the power of upgrade. Something is revealed here that is suddenly accessible to everyone. And we already have the Sun and Venus conjunction. So value, love, the Venusian element in our minds, in our thought processes. We are seeing beauty, we are perceiving beauty, we are speaking beauty, we are expressing beauty, beautiful words, beautiful thoughts, beautiful communication, flirt, convincing with words, sensuality. Now, of course, we need to mention that as this Venus and Sun conjunction is going to move a bit further in to Gemini, the North Node will sextile them. How beautiful, wonderful. And then Chiron will sextile them. Why is this so important? Healing with words, healing with gestures, healing with solidarity, healing with compassion, healing with treating another person as they were our brothers, putting our differences aside culturally, religiously, in putting a barrier aside that opens the path to seeing another soul as just a brother or sister, basically. And that has such a powerful healing energy and force to it that it is a gesture like that that heals slowly and surely generational traumas and hurts and injustices. When a soul is able to put some generational bias, BS, or history or wounds aside and see, let's say, a karmic enemy as just that gesture itself has such a massive impact that it can heal 20 injustices, if you know what I mean, if we would compare it energetically. So that is such a beautiful energy. And Saturn's own square with Venus and the Sun, not this week, but later on, adds the morality to it, that you truly have to be serious and mean it, because otherwise you will not be able to break free from the Pisces. Saturn in Pisces is also what happened to the past and the lessons of the past. And you know what I mean, the blockages, Saturn, the concrete wall. And something really important, but for that I need to move to the 1st of June. 1st of June, Children's Day. Jupiter, Venus, Sun in Gemini. Very, very, very good for. And Pluto's trine to Jupiter is very strong. How wonderful, beautiful. This is such a good energy. However, remember the serious side of it. Mars conjunct Chiron, the wounding, regardless if it's the healing sense or the aggravation of the wound sense. And Mars conjunct Aries. The rebelliousness of this energy is at maximum. This is proper instability, rebellion. Tempers are high. Demand for justice, freedom, sovereignty is at maximum. Now, this is proper rebellion. This can be proper civil war in some places. This is proper power of the people. Why? Pluto, Aquarius, retrograde, power of the people, giving a lot of all its power to Jupiter in Gemini. So this is where Jupiter in Gemini, so people mobilize themselves in an instant. The collective thought, the collective information, and rebellion. And then Mercury is on Algol. Algol is quite a notorious malefic star, but whenever something big triggers it, something happens to leaders, big leaders of a country, of nation, of a group, organization, whatever. And Jupiter was very recently on top of Algol, very recently in May, when it was at this 26th degree of Taurus. Just look at the world events. Leaders, a leader fell. Uranus is the accident factor. Aviatic accident of a leader, of a big leader. And that leader who fell in an aviatic disaster is so very symbolic of Algol, because it had it ruled with an iron fist. But look at around that time, prime ministers resigning or candidates resigning, a lot of resigning. I don't want to be leader anymore. That's also certain planets being on top of Algol, specifically Jupiter, Venus, Sun. All of these planets activated Algol, and we saw leaders really, really having a very hard time. Or let's not even pick the most negative expression. Their leaders faced a lot of sudden changes and challenges, and many times reverse of polarities, because Algol is Medusa's head, basically, you know what I mean? And Medusa's head was what killed the Cetus. So, you know what I mean? It was used for the best possible purpose ever. It saved the day. So sometimes Algol, in its most positive expression, is like the hero, like in the stories. The prince defeated the dragon or the monster, saved the princess, went to the king, and the king was so grateful that either he immediately gave the crown to the prince, become king, the new king, or the hero had a very fortunate ending of his story in any way, shape, and form. Sometimes that's alcohol. The hero who kills the monster, the dragon, saves the day, of course, is rewarded. So, Mercury, news of this, news, communication, information. So, yes. And finally, let us move on to the end of the week where we have the moon conjunct Chiron. So, remember Mars's conjunction to Chiron. Now we feel it emotionally. Our soul is on fire. Our feelings are on fire, moon. But at this moment, Mars is conjunct Aries. There is a very powerful rebellious energy here at play. So there is something definitely is going to mobilize, happen. But this can be a massive movement in the name of peace, in the name of, well, the sun will trine the south node in Libra. Everything that was, how should I even express this in the most correct way possible? No, the south node in Libra, all the relationships that changed. Let's understand it for a moment collectively. All the international treaties that were broken, south node in Libra, all the agreements that were cancelled, like for example, Turkey or some, well, Egypt, I do believe, canceled some kind of agreement with Israel, just like that, overnight. And I foretold this many months ago with South Node in the sign of Libra. Even when Jupiter was in the sign of Aries, opposing anything in Libra, Jupiter already paved this out. And then north south node, the nodal axis, executed and is still executing it. So you can imagine how this energy and diplomats, like almost this year, every single week, this diplomat was recalled, that diplomat was recalled, this diplomat, that diplomat, uh, blowing up a embassy, or someone being arrested in an embassy. These two, South Node and Libra, because the ambassadorial quality is Libra. You know what I mean? So it's happening. So let's hope that something big happens for peace, for freedom, for everyone to matter. Aries in the sign of Aries, everyone matters. Absolutely everyone matters. No one must be left behind. Saturn in Pisces, it doesn't matter what the sacrifice for it this is. Now let me translate this to you. If certain companies and government, no, if every single government in the world and companies and all of that would be concentrated, or the nucleus of it would be humanitarianism, Aquarius, Pluto in Aquarius, Uranus, then you can imagine that a lot of problems that we have today would simply not be able to exist. But neither would luxury, excess of many things, because those would be sacrificed in the process. There wouldn't be certain people to have strikingly, mind-blowingly, or criminally Vietnam, if I, or Taiwan. Again, I'm sorry. Either one of these two countries, someone, a real estate mogul, was sentenced to death for big fraud, big time fraud. You can imagine. That's a big deal. You know, so where I want, if the Aquarian vibe, expression, philosophy would be the nucleus, well, then we would have a very, 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 very different world. But guess what? That's what's happening. The Capricornian nucleus is burning up, just like when a star runs out, even of helium fuel, that's when the heavy elements will start to come into play. So that's when everything will start to turn into iron towards the very, very end of the star's life. So that's where the Capricorn is broken up and Aquarius is taking its place. You know how the energy is shifting. Pluto, and specifically I'm speaking about Pluto, because Pluto is the nucleus, the battery, the power, the impact, the collective impact. Everyone's under its power. All of us are under, for example, Pluto in Capricorn's power. We were under it and are in a certain way because everyone who lives in society has to obey the Capricorn rules, regulations, etc., etc. So this is where it's shifting, and the shift is not very easy. So things which have unjustifiably much tumultuous power or money. Why money? Pluto is either big money or big resource like fuel or big land, anything that is maximum value, and someone has it in a justifiably tumultuous excess, not legally, because the justification factor is Saturn in Pisces morally, then that will start to crumble, and that is what's going on. So these expressions are either given the chance to balance out their frequency, or the tower moment will slowly and surely install. Anyway, Aries in Aries is exactly what I said. Everyone matters, everything matters. So, and this goes hand in hand with what Aquarius is, the society, the collective. But a healthy collective needs healthy, functional components, the individual. So everyone matters. Not in an exaggerated way, for example, like socialism, because Aquarius is about freedom. The sacrifice cannot be more than the good it does. So strong equilibrium here. So this is what these energies are doing this week. Well, I really, really hope that this helped you guys and this was at least a tiny bit helpful. Wishing everyone, well, I'm not even sure what to wish because chaos is going to be present. Playfulness and lightheartedness and humor is also going to be present. Romance, attraction, sensuality is also going to be present. But a lot of big things that will shock us, collectively speaking, are also going to be present. So what I can wish everyone is to be your energetic Neptune, to be love, to be the love you want to see in the world. So thank you everyone. Until next time, bye for now.